June 21, 1982, St Mary's Hospital, London. At 9:03 p.m, Princess Diana gave birth to a baby boy, the future King of England. The crowds outside erupted in cheers. The palace released official statements. The newspapers prepared celebratory headlines. But inside that hospital room, something was breaking. Because the first words Prince Charles said when he saw his son weren't words of joy. They were words that would haunt Diana for the rest of her life. To understand the tragedy of William's birth, you need to understand what led to that moment. Diana was 20 years old when she discovered she was pregnant. She had been married to Charles for less than 6 weeks. The honeymoon had been a disaster. Charles had brought photos of Camilla. He had been cold, distant. Diana had cried herself to sleep most nights. And now she was pregnant, carrying the future heir to the throne, terrified and alone. The pregnancy was announced in November 1981. The nation rejoiced. The fairy tale was complete. The young princess was going to have a baby. But behind palace walls, Diana was suffering. The morning sickness wasn't just morning. It was all day, every day. She was throwing up constantly, dizzy, weak, unable to eat. The doctors called it hyperemesis gravidarum, severe morning sickness. Diana called it hell. But the physical sickness was nothing compared to the emotional pain. Charles showed no interest in the pregnancy, no excitement about becoming a father. He continued his routine, his polo matches, his hunting trips, his phone calls to Camilla. Diana would lie in bed, nauseated and miserable, while Charles was out living his life. She felt invisible. Even pregnant with his child, she felt invisible. The bulimia started during the pregnancy. Diana was so sick she couldn't keep food down anyway, but then she started doing it intentionally, eating, then purging. It gave her a sense of control. Everything else in her life was out of control. The loveless marriage, the relentless media attention, the suffocating palace protocols. But this she could control. It was destroying her body, but it was hers to destroy. Charles noticed Diana was losing weight. You need to eat more. Think of the baby, but he said it like a duty, like she was a broodmare who needed to stay healthy for breeding purposes. There was no tenderness, no concern for Diana herself, just concern for the heir she was carrying. Diana felt like an incubator, nothing more. Her only value was the baby growing inside her. The palace scheduled every detail of the pregnancy. Which hospital, which doctors, which room. Diana had no say. This wasn't her pregnancy, it was the monarchy's pregnancy. She was just the vessel. The media coverage was relentless. Photographers followed her everywhere, zooming in on her growing belly, speculating about her weight, criticizing her fashion choices. Diana felt like a specimen under a microscope. The worst part was the loneliness. Diana was surrounded by people, staff, doctors, security, but she had no one to talk to, no one who understood what she was going through. Her mother was distant. Her sisters were busy with their own lives. Charles was emotionally absent, and the palace staff treated her like a child, telling her what to do, never asking how she felt. Diana was drowning, and no one was throwing her a lifeline. As the pregnancy progressed, Diana's mental health deteriorated. She was having panic attacks, crying uncontrollably, unable to sleep. The palace doctors prescribed sedatives. Rest. They treated the symptoms but ignored the cause. Diana wasn't just sick, she was depressed, trapped in a loveless marriage, carrying a baby she desperately wanted but terrified she wouldn't be a good mother to. The weight of expectation was crushing her. Then came the conversations about the baby's gender. Charles wanted a girl. He said it openly, constantly. I hope it's a girl. A girl would be lovely. Diana heard this and felt confused. The heir should be male. That's what the monarchy needed. Why was Charles hoping for a girl? Later, she would understand. Charles didn't want the pressure of raising the future king. He wanted a daughter he could dote on without the weight of the crown. But Diana felt like Charles's preferences meant her baby was already a disappointment before it was even born. The labour started on June 21st, the longest day of the year. Diana's contractions began in the morning. Charles was notified. He arrived at the hospital looking annoyed. "This is inconvenient. I had plans today." Diana was in the early stages of labour, in pain but trying to stay calm. Charles sat in the corner reading a book, not holding her hand, not comforting her, just waiting for it to be over so he could get back to his life. As the labour intensified, Diana begged for pain relief. The doctors wanted her to wait, to labour naturally for as long as possible, but Diana was in agony. "Please, please give me something." Finally, after hours of suffering, they gave her an epidural. The relief was immediate, but the emotional pain remained. Charles still sat in the corner, detached, disinterested. Diana felt like she was going through this alone. In a room full of people, she was completely alone. At 9:03 p.m., after 16 hours of labour, Diana pushed her son into the world. The doctors held him up. A baby boy, healthy, perfect, crying lustily. Diana reached for him immediately. "Give him to me. Please give him to me." They placed the baby on her chest. Diana looked down at her son and felt something shift inside her. Love. Pure, overwhelming, unconditional love. This tiny person, this perfect little human. He was hers, and she was his. Nothing else mattered. But then Charles spoke. The words that would haunt Diana forever. "Oh, it's a boy, and he's got rusty hair." Charles sounded disappointed, flat, like he'd been hoping for something different. Diana looked up at him, confused, hurt. "This is your son. Our son? The future king? And you're disappointed?" Charles shrugged. "I was hoping for a girl. And I thought he'd have blonde hair like you. That rusty colour will darken. He'll probably be a redhead. From your side of the family." Diana felt something inside her die in that moment. She was holding their newborn son, this miracle, this perfect little boy. And Charles was criticising his hair colour, not celebrating, not expressing joy, criticising. Diana looked down at her baby, at his tiny red face, his little wisps of hair, and she made a silent promise. "I will love you enough for both of us. I will protect you. I will never let you feel unwanted. I will be the parent you deserve." Charles left the hospital shortly after the birth. He had polo practice the next morning. He needed to sleep. Diana stared at him in disbelief. "You're leaving? We just had a baby." Charles looked at her like she was being unreasonable. "Diana, you're fine. The baby is fine. The doctors and nurses are here. What do you need me for?" And he left. He left Diana alone in the hospital with their newborn son, hours after giving birth. Charles left to go play polo. Diana held William all night. She couldn't stop looking at him, counting his fingers, stroking his soft skin, marveling at his perfection. The nurses tried to take him to the nursery, so Diana could rest, but she refused. "Number, keep him here. I want him with me." She was terrified that if she let him out of her sight, something would happen, that he would be taken away, that this moment of pure love would end. The next morning, Diana had to present William to the world. The famous hospital steps photo. Diana in a polka dot dress, holding her newborn son, smiling for the cameras. Charles standing beside her, looking proud, the perfect royal family. But it was all performance, all facade. Inside, Diana was exhausted, emotional, still bleeding from childbirth. And Charles was thinking about his polo match. The photo became iconic, but it captured a lie. The early days of motherhood were the hardest of Diana's life. She was 21 years old. She had no experience with babies, and she was suffering from severe postpartum depression. She would hold William and sob. "What if I'm a terrible mother? What if I can't do this?" The palace staff tried to help, but they had their own agenda. Training the future king, maintaining protocols. They treated William like royal property, not like Diana's son. Diana fought them constantly. This is my baby. I will decide how to raise him. Charles was useless as a father. He held William occasionally, for photo opportunities, but he showed no interest in the daily care. Changing diapers, feeding, soothing. That was women's work. Charles had done his duty. He'd produced an heir. Now he could go back to his life, his charities, his mistress, his real interests. Diana was left to raise William essentially alone, a single mother in a loveless marriage, living in a palace but feeling like a prisoner. But something unexpected happened. Motherhood saved Diana. Loving William gave her a purpose, a reason to keep fighting, to keep living. She was drowning in her marriage, destroyed by Charles's betrayal. But William needed her, and that need gave Diana strength she didn't know she had. She couldn't give up, because William needed a mother. And Diana was determined to be the best mother she could be. Diana broke royal protocols constantly when it came to William. The palace wanted nannies to raise him. Diana insisted on doing it herself. She breastfed him, unheard of for royals. She woke up for night feedings. She changed his diapers. She refused to be a distant, formal royal mother. She wanted to be hands-on, present, involved. The palace was scandalized, but Diana didn't care. This is my son. I will raise him my way. When William was 9 months old, Diana and Charles were scheduled for a 6-week tour of Australia and New Zealand. The palace expected Diana to leave William behind. That's how it was done. Royal children stayed home with nannies while parents travelled. But Diana refused. Absolutely not. I'm not leaving my baby for 6 weeks. If I have to go on this tour, William comes with me, the palace argued. Diana stood firm. Finally, they relented. William would come. It was unprecedented. And it showed Diana's priorities. Her son came first, always. The Australia tour changed everything. Diana brought William on official engagements, let him crawl on the floor during photo calls, played with him in front of cameras. The world fell in love. Here was a royal mother who actually seemed to enjoy her child, who treated him like a person, not an ornament. The crowds loved it. The media loved it. And Diana loved showing the world what real motherhood looked like. But Charles resented Diana's bond with William. He felt excluded, unnecessary. Diana and William had their own world, their own language of giggles and cuddles. Charles didn't know how to enter that world. He tried occasionally, awkward attempts to play with his son, but William would cry, reach for Diana, and Charles would give up, retreat back to his comfortable distance, and resent Diana for being the parent William preferred. As William grew into a toddler, the differences between Diana's parenting and Charles's became more stark. Diana took William to McDonald's, 2 theme parks, to homeless shelters so he could see how other people lived. She wanted William to be normal, to understand the real world. Charles thought this was inappropriate. William is the future king. He needs to understand his role, his duty. Diana disagreed. He's a child. He needs to have a childhood. The battles over William's upbringing became another source of conflict in the failing marriage. Charles wanted traditional royal education, boarding schools, distance, formality. Diana wanted warmth, connection, normalcy. They compromised on some things, but Diana made sure William knew he was loved, hugged, kissed, told daily how special he was, not because he was a prince, but because he was William. One moment captured Diana's approach perfectly. She was taking William to his first day of nursery school. Photographers were everywhere. William looked scared, overwhelmed. Diana knelt down to his level, looked him in the eyes and said, "I know you're nervous, but I promise you're going to have fun, and I'll be right here when school ends." Then she hugged him tight. The photo went around the world. A mother comforting her scared child. Simple, human. Revolutionary for royals. Charles never understood Diana's relationship with William. He saw it as indulgent, spoiling the boy, making him soft. But Diana saw it as essential. William would face enormous pressure as future king. He would have the weight of a nation on his shoulders. He needed to know he was loved unconditionally, that he had a safe place to fall, that someone would always be in his corner. Diana was determined to be that person. The irony is that Charles's disappointment at William's birth pushed Diana to become an even better mother. If Charles wouldn't love William properly, Diana would love him twice as much. If Charles wouldn't be present, Diana would never leave. Charles's failure as a father made Diana determined to succeed as a mother. And she did. By all accounts, William's childhood, despite the chaos of his parents' marriage, was filled with love, because Diana made sure of it. Years later, when William became a father himself, he spoke about his mother's influence. "My mother taught me that royal children should be hugged, kissed, told they're loved. She taught me that duty and warmth aren't incompatible, that you can be royal and human. Everything I do as a father, I learned from her." Those words would have meant everything to Diana, because motherhood was her greatest achievement, her most important role. Not princess, not icon, mother. But on that night in June 1982, Diana didn't know any of this yet. She just knew she was holding her baby. And her husband had just expressed disappointment. She felt the weight of the future pressing down, the knowledge that she would have to protect this little boy from the media, from the palace, from his own father's indifference. It was an enormous responsibility. And Diana was only 21, still a child herself in many ways. But as she looked down at William's sleeping face, Diana felt something solidify inside her. Determination, purpose. This baby needed her, and she would not fail him, no matter what happened with Charles, no matter how the marriage fell apart, no matter how much she suffered. She would be the mother William deserved. That promise, made in a hospital room in 1982, was the promise Diana kept until the day she died. The birth of William marked the beginning of Diana's transformation. Before William, she was a frightened girl trapped in a nightmare marriage. After William, she was a mother with purpose. The bulimia continued, the depression continued, the pain of Charles's betrayal continued. But Diana had a reason to fight now, a reason to survive. William needed her. And that need gave Diana strength she didn't know she possessed. Charles never understood what he lost that night in the hospital. By expressing disappointment at his son's birth, by leaving shortly after to play polo, by showing indifference to this miracle, Charles lost the chance to build a real family. Diana would have forgiven so much if Charles had just been a good father, but he couldn't even do that. And so Diana's love for Charles, what little remained, died that night, replaced by something stronger: maternal love, protective love, fierce, unconditional, unchanging love for her son. The newspapers the next day showed joyful headlines: "Royal heir born, future king arrives, prince and princess celebrate." But the real story wasn't in the headlines. The real story was in a hospital room where a young mother held her baby and made a vow: "I will love you. I will protect you. I will never let you feel unwanted." That vow was Diana's greatest legacy. Not the charity work, not the fashion moments, not the royal duties. Her greatest legacy was being William's mother and Harry's mother, loving them fiercely, protecting them courageously, giving them the childhood they deserved. From Diana's diary, written days after William's birth: "I look at him sleeping and I can't believe he's real, that I created this perfect little person. Charles was disappointed, said he wanted a girl, said he didn't like William's hair color. Those words broke something inside me. How can you look at this miracle and find fault? But I've realized something. Charles's failure as a father means I have to be twice the parent. I have to love William enough for both of us. And I will. I promise you, William, I will. You will never doubt that you're loved. You will never feel unwanted. You will know every single day of your life that you matter. Not because you're a prince, not because you're the heir, but because you're you. My perfect, beautiful, beloved son. The final image of William's birth story shows Diana leaving the hospital. She's carrying William in her arms, not letting anyone else hold him. Charles walks beside her but slightly apart, not touching Diana, not reaching for the baby. The distance between them is visible, but Diana doesn't seem to notice. She's looking down at William, her whole world contained in that tiny bundle. The cameras capture this moment, a new mother leaving the hospital with her son. But what the cameras don't capture is the promise, the vow, the determination. Diana would spend the rest of her life keeping that promise, being the mother William deserved, loving him unconditionally, protecting him fiercely. And years later, William would say, "My mother was the most loving person I've ever known." Those words, that tribute, that's the real story of William's birth. Not the heir to the throne, but the son of Diana, the most loved little boy in the world.